Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, we're your hosts. I'm Will, that's Blake. Today we're here to talk a little Worlds Beyond Number, the finale of the first arc of this, hopefully, many year-long journey. So excited to dive in, but before we get into the business, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing all right. It is Monday when we're recording this. Sorry, I'm opening the dice that we got, and I'm just like organizing them.
Spoilers.
I'm not gonna show them. I'm not gonna show them yet, but I felt like this need to organize them in front of me for like good luck for today's, just a good vibe for today's episode.
Yeah, now that you say that, Rose from our community, and I think a few other people actually like roll dice during episodes and stuff, I don't know if it's like a ritual or like a what's the word I'm looking for, superstition like type of thing.
I do that too,
but I like that. I've never done that, but I think I need some desk dice now, just so.
Yeah, if I'm watching it in the living room with Joy, I'll get my what's it called, like rolling mat thingy,
your dice tray.
Thank you, dice tray. And get like one of my favorite sets of dice, and I'll have that out. And then anytime, like just for fun, if it's like just a funny moment or it's like a big moment, I'll just do like a quick D20.
Ooh, I like that.
So I don't know, just keeps me enjoying it, I guess.
Oh,
it is a ritual, like I guess,
Yeah.
So anyway,
I'm gonna have to steal it.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do it though, because we already do it.
Okay,
so.
My bad. I just wanted to be one of the cool kids.
So we did just have our first episode of our Calamity rewatch in the Discord.
We did. That was really fun.
Night. And if you have not seen Calamity, or maybe you have, it is, in my opinion, hands down, probably the best D&D for sure, but like best live action narrated story. I don't know how else you'd describe it other than D&D. Probably that I've ever seen. So we watched last night. We got together, had a bunch of people in the Discord. So if you liked Calamity, don't forget that every Sunday, so this upcoming Sunday and then the two after, we're going to be finishing watching Calamity together. Everyone is welcome to that. And if you missed the first one and you've never seen Calamity, you just need to watch episode 1 between now and Sunday. And we'll probably mention it again, I would assume, like in our CR episode, probably. But,
yeah. I don't know if I guess we won't have another Worlds Beyond before our next watch party. But yeah, if you follow our other content, we'll definitely be mentioning it. And I don't know how much of an overlap there. Like, I don't know how many like uniquely Worlds Beyond people we have in our community. I assume there's a pretty large crossover between our Critical Role community and our Worlds Beyond. But if you are just a Worlds Beyond person, like you don't follow Critical Role, would highly recommend checking out Calamity. It might be a nice segue for you to venture into Critical Role. And the good news is it's got like half of the Worlds Beyond Number cast. So it'll be a nice little, again, segue for you. Brennan is the DM, and Lou and Aabria are both players in it. So yeah, would highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, to check it out. Like Blake said, just watch episode 1 and then come join us for episode 2 on Sunday. But even if you have seen it, come join us. Like I think probably most of us have already seen it, and we're just enjoying rewatching it together. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I'm excited for next Sunday. Is there anything else we need to talk about before we just get into business here?
I don't think so. We've got
I don't think so either.
So. Yeah.
So yeah, this was the end of the first arc. Which the next episode, I mean, I guess we could talk about this once we launch into things, but Arc 2 starts October 24th.
Yeah, about a month away.
So I guess this might be the last Worlds Beyond content we make for a while.
Yeah, it's 4 weeks away. So yeah, this is probably it for about a month.
Yeah, so it'll seem like we drop off the face of the earth if that's the only if Worlds Beyond is the only thing you come to us for, but we'll be around and we will be back for Arc 2.
Yes, assuming something tragic doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, God forbid. But yeah, all right, let's get into it then. So as always, we are going to recap the episode before we launch into our proper discussion of it, and we cut that recap out and host it separately on YouTube for your recapping convenience, which I'm assuming may come in handy after this long break before the next episode. So if you find yourself just on that recap and you want to check out our full discussion on the episode, we will link it in the description below. But without further ado, would you like to start us off today, my friend?
Yes. So this was episode 14, the end of the first arc of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One. There is an ocean vaster than this one. And if you remember the cliffhanger from the previous episode, we had Ursulon coming up to meet Moro, who had created this huge whirlpool in the ocean to come down and essentially attack Naram. And as Ursulon successfully grapples Moro, the whirlpool slams shut, presumably drowns all the other wizards that were descending with him. And we partially leave this moment to go back to Suvi, who is being held in the grip of the Strangler. And Suvi is realizing that there is essentially no hope of stopping Orima, that her fury is too great, and that Port Talon is going to be overrun. And so Suvi ultimately realizes the only hope there is for this town is to essentially lead Orima's Stranglers away over to Naram in the ocean. And she does a couple of things. First of all, she tries to tell the Azure Battalion to stand down. However, she rolls pretty terribly for that. In fact, if you don't recall, she was rolling pretty awful through this entire saga of these 3 episodes. So no different here. Still rolling terribly. But then she also has a perception check of an 18 to the Strangler that's holding her. And if you recall, the Strangler believes that she is Naram. And so she decides to essentially take not necessarily take the Strangler, grab the Strangler and kind of pull on and be like, come on, and then jump on her horse and start galloping towards the harbor. Orima can't seem to hear Suvi in the sense of Orima, we get some dialogue from Brennan that's basically like, Naram, talk to me. Naram, where are you going? What are you doing? And essentially all of the Stranglers and the Kudzu basically freak out and begin to chase after Suvi, who is galloping away on her horse. Going a little bit out of order of what happened, but just in terms of simplicity of the recap, there is also going to be Archmage Galani who shows up, who's kind of like, okay, what are we doing? And Suvi is like, we have to take Orima to Naram. It's really the only hope for the city. And so she continues to gallop through and basically is trying to get there as fast as possible while also navigating the presumably evacuated sections of the city. She continues to roll terribly. I think at one point she had an opportunity to escape the grasp of the Undre and rolled a 4 or a 6 or something.
Yeah, she's
pulled off her horse. And I don't remember if Galani was helping lead them on or not, but there is a moment where Galani blows open a portion of the wall to help more of the Kudzu and the Stranglers come through just to get to Naram faster. And also there's this moment where Suvi is essentially trying to talk to Orima, can't figure out why it's not working, and she looks down and sees the pendant from her mother sitting on her neck and realizes that this thing is, as we know, enchanted to prevent spirits from essentially to be invisible to the spirits. She rips it off. Orima shrieks and screams liar and dispels the Naram illusion. We'll come back to that in a moment. We go back to Ursulon, who is essentially at the bottom of the ocean with Moro. And Moro is panicking, is essentially drowning, and realizes that Ursulon was a spirit basically the entire time. And in this moment, with one last action, decides to cast Disintegrate on a level 1, actually level 2, Paladin. And fortunately, Naram, boom, level 9 counterspell It was basically like, Moro, I don't think so. It was a very cool moment. Also, there is this moment where Ursulon decides to pin Moro to the ocean floor. He drives Wavebreaker through his clothes, and as this happens, the coral sort of rises up from the ocean floor and forms like this coral hand that grabs Moro and essentially like pins him to the bottom of the ocean floor. And there is essentially this moment where Naram is basically like, Naram is insightful to Ursulon, struggling to figure out, do I kill Moro or do I not? Is that the right thing to do? Is that the honorable thing to do? Ursulon's conflicted. And so Naram basically says, hey, it doesn't get any easier than this. But essentially opts to cast a magical spell that creates gills on Moro's neck, and Moro is able to breathe underwater and is essentially left there for presumably eternity to be imprisoned at the bottom of the ocean and to basically think about what he did. There's also this really cool dialogue between Naram and Ursulon where, actually that's later, excuse me. Ame, though, is also going to reach out to Naram and is basically like, hey, we need some help here. This is getting a bit wild. And Naram essentially is like, we've done what we can to save the town of Port Talon. However, basically, I'm on my way. There's this really cool, I don't remember how Brennan described it because it was so many weeks ago, but there's this really cool moment where as the Kutsu and the Stranglers are making eventually to the harbor, where I think the way Brennan described it was like Naram like gushing out almost like Aquaman with like Ursulon coming up like on a wave too, and like both of them like landing on the harbor or something like that. Just a very cool like mental image that Brennan created. But essentially, there is a thorn of Orima that is moving to strike, I think Ame, maybe? I can't recall.
I think it might have been, I think it was Suvi.
Okay, Suvi, who, by the way, has been pulled off her horse and is not in a good place. But Naram basically jumps in the way and is pierced instead, much to Ame's dismay, thinking that Naram is maybe now going to die. And Naram essentially says, she has poisoned me many times. She's fierce. However, she's also the most beautiful of all the spirits. The now reunited, the chaos subsides for a moment as Naram turns to Ursulon and basically says, there's an ocean vaster than this one in the realm of spirits, and one day we will welcome you home with a great feast in your name. Naram also points out that Wavebreaker has the ability to break the curse, that they must move quickly to do so, but it's also around this time that Galani shows up and has this kind of strange moment of, should I attack Naram? Yeah, I think I'm going to. And as she attacks Naram, the vines of Orima reach up over Naram's face to shield him, and completely Naram disappears. And all of the Kutsu and Stranglers basically drop lifeless as this happens. And Orima and Naram are gone. Do you want to take it from there?
Yes, and I looked it up. I was incorrect. It is Ame. Orima is like attacking Suvi because of the liar thing, because she was disguised as Naram. But then Ame, I think, commands her to like stop. Like Ame's trying to help Suvi, and then Orima like turns her attention to Ame.
Yeah, and Orima uses a legendary resistance for whatever this command spell was.
Yeah, so she's trying to pierce Ame, and Naram blocks it for her. Like Blake said, Naram kind of teleports away. The Undre collapse. The Kudzu goes inanimate, and Suvi kind of like runs and turns the corner and sees Ame and Ursulon standing there. They quickly kind of check in on each other, but they're not alone, so they can't really kind of like fully fill each other in. But Ursulon lays on hands on Suvi and she describes, or he describes, that she feels like the warmth of the fire from home, and she tells him, she's so sorry. Ame then addresses this crowd that's kind of gathered around, the crowd that she had previously been trying to like create a shrine earlier, and I don't know if it was this episode or the one before, but she addresses them and says, Naram is who taught your ancestors to fish. Orima is the one who's protected these walls for generations. You have forgotten the ways, like we have not tended to the shrines or given them the respect they deserve. We cannot control the spirits, we can only work with them. And I can't remember the type of check, but Brennan has her make some sort of check. It might have been persuasion. She hits a 24. So the people remove their hats and bow in respect. And a very old woman kind of steps forth from out of the crowd. And she grabs Ame's hand and she begins to sing. And then everyone begins to join in. And then production-wise, this song actually plays within the episode. And it was amazing, beautiful moment. So we kind of have the song play, and as it ends, Galani walks up. She and Suvi catch up. They think that Moro is presumed dead. Galani thanks Ame for tending to the citizenry of Port Talon, and then basically tells Suvi, like, hey, get your things, like, you're coming to stay in the governor's mansion now. And Suvi's like, yes, of course, and don't worry, like, I'll explain everything to Steel. So Ame speaks with some elders, excuse me, in the village to explain to them, here's how to best tend to the shrines and make offerings. And Ursulon, meanwhile, is still feeling his breath kind of for the first time in so long, feeling the source of his magic, and he feels alive. And as he's feeling this, he looks down and sees that, he's wearing his glamour. But this is just a thing that he wears. The thing that he is this quiet thing inside of himself that he has now regained. So we cut back to the governor's mansion with Suvi arriving back. She starts to read the book, her parents' book that she was reading earlier. But as she does this, or before she does this, she mends her necklace that she kind of ripped off during the Orima scene. And she mends it in the same way she used to see her mother mend things, which was like a shortened version of the mending spell, just to make it kind of slightly quicker for really small items. So Suvi does that, and then she begins reading the book. She has to make some checks here, and she continues rolling poorly. But so she's looking at it and, going through this book, and that's when Ursulon comes back into the room, and she asks what happened, and they kind of catch each other up on everything that was going on. And, he says, I broke the coral ring, and then I remembered this encounter with Naram from when I was a kid, and I realized I couldn't just wait until Steel got here. Like, I had to go help him. Then Ame enters the room, and there's a quick, brief little bit where the fox, like, thinks he's dying from eating so many fish. But Ame notices that Ursulon smells different. And he tells them that he reconnected with his breath while with Naram. Conversation then quickly turns to breaking the curse on Ame. And Ursulon picks up Wavebreaker and begins just kind of waving it around, unsure of how this curse-breaking power works. So he rolls a perception check and realizes the difference between now and when he felt connected to his breath under the sea is that he's expecting something now, instead of it just kind of happening naturally, like with the Divine Smite. The conversation gets very phallic around now, as sword play is compared to impotence. But Ursulon concentrates, and Brennan kind of gets them back on track. And he thinks back to how he felt when Ame first told him that he had a quest and that he was honorable. And as he's thinking about those things, he just brings the sword down slowly towards Ame. And he recalls the joy he felt with Naram as a cub, the joy he felt in the summer with Ame and Suvi, and the weight of honor and the weight of a quest, and the ever-present shame he's felt and failure. But how those things, he's always felt like they were the constant companions of honor. But for the first time he met honor, the first time he met honor, there was no shame. It was just joy. So as he's thinking about these things, the sword alights, and he feels this connection to joy and honor and life and quests. And there are two forms of magic as he moves forward, one lighter and one deeper and more profound. And Brennan asks, which one do you follow? And Lou says he follows the deeper. So he asks for a con save and a wisdom save from Ame. And she rolls a nat 20 and a 9. So Ursulon feels himself cut something. And we've got perception checks, I think,
He's
from
dead.
Ursulon. Yeah, and Arcana from Suvi. Suvi rolls a nat 1, but Ursulon rolls a dirty 20. And he can tell that he's removed the curse. However, as it comes undone, Ame feels something kind of like sliding within her, and she's like filling with like a poisonous feeling. So Brennan does this really cool. He says, okay, I'm going to let you assign the two rolls you just rolled, the nat 20 and the 9. And because you hit a nat 20, I'm going to kind of tell you what's at stake. He says, if you fail the wisdom save, that means the curse will take something with it as it's extracted. But if you use the nat 20 here, you lose nothing. But if you fail the con save, that means something will happen to your body. But if you use the nat 20 here, nothing will happen to your body. So does she want to pay the toll with her mind or her body, essentially? And she decides to pay the toll with her body, because her mind is what makes her a witch. So as this curse is rended from her, her body shudders with pain. She collapses, begins vomiting this black bile. The fox starts freaking out, and Ame is like seizing on the floor. Ursulon runs over, casts protection from evil and good on her. Suvi casts identify on the bile. We have another con save from Ame with a 20 DC. She hits a 19, so she fails and she goes unconscious, and so does the fox. In Ame's mind, she starts dreaming of Grandmother Rin and the first time she spoke of the world's heart. Suvi's identify in the meantime finishes, and this bile is not the curse, it's something that was hidden behind the curse, essentially meaning whoever put this on her put these like safety precautions in place. Like if the curse is removed, like she dies. So Ame she's not going to die from this due to her roles, but not without tremendous effort and some consequence. So Suvi tries to figure out where this thing came from, and Brennan says she remembers an old fear of being a little girl in a town on fire, and she thinks of the man who wore the form of a beast, Yorin. She can smell his smell on this bile. So we now cut to Steele's ship arriving, docking above the mansion, and Steele arrives in the chambers and sees Ame knocked out, and a little bit of time has passed. So Ame's like in the bed, and Suvi and Ursulon are tending to her. So she walks in. Suvi's like, "What do you know?" And Steele says, "I've been brought up to speed, but give me a quick rundown." And Suvi's wondering, should I throw Ursulon under the bus or not? But she ultimately just tells Steele the truth, and Ursulon fesses up to his part in this as well. He tells her it didn't feel right to wait. She says over 150 people are dead. In the future, if you make decisions that put my soldiers at risk, I will consider you an enemy, to Ursulon. She then asks where Moro is, and Ursulon says he was taken by the sea. And then she asks, okay, what's going on with Ame? They tell her that they removed the curse, and she says, oh, so glad you didn't wait for me and use the vast resources of the Citadel to help with this. But Suvi just kind of cuts through her sarcasm and is like, hey, where the heck is Yorin? And Steele's like, why? And Suvi explains that, she can smell him on this. And Steele says, we have a very long overdue conversation to have. So she then casts a divination spell over Ame and says we have to get her help immediately. The longer she's like this, the ones that cast this spell on her will be able to like track her. She says that stranger that showed up at your cottage, this curse, like none of this is an accident. We got to get to the Citadel to get this girl help. She tells Suvi like, you'll be in command of looking after her once we're there. And Ursulon, hey, you're welcome to come, but you're not commanded to. And he says you would be a guest of the Citadel, beholden to our rules, but not under our command. So she also says, I can't blame you for the actions you took with Naram, but I hope all the weight of the lives that have been lost are not lost on you. And she just says, I hope everyone thinks clearly. Um, Suvi then briefly tells her that Galani was like an exemplary wizard throughout this crisis, and Brennan has her make an insight check, and she can tell that Steele is really surprised that Suvi is complimenting another wizard, and that there's a pride there, like a growth and maturity that she recognizes that Steele is really proud of her for. And she's also glad that Galani, she now knows, is someone she could trust. So later that day, they board the airship to head back to the Citadel. As they travel, there's an Arcana check from Suvi, and after about 3 days of travel, she realizes they leave the sea and instead hit this vast ocean of sand. During the travel time, she starts reading her parents' book again and comes across a note in her father's handwriting. And this is very like technical and very like deep lore. But essentially what it is she's dissecting these notes her father was making about these reflexive, indicative, like spell casting notes, like when you speak these things and how it affects the spell. And essentially that there was one symbol that he deemed unnecessary, like you could omit it. And Suvi's like, what? Like you can't omit that, you need that. And she's like, what can I test this on? My father's notes here that I could see if he's right. And it's in this moment that she realizes she already knows this is the same thing as the shortened mending spell that she casted earlier that she copied from her mother. It removes this very thing that her father is talking about. It's at this point that she hears a knock at the door, and Steele's like, hey, we're about to be here. We arrive in an hour. And Steele's like, we should talk. It's been a long time coming, but it never felt like the right moment. And she says, it's about the night that I last saw your parents. I need to tell you about Yoren. And that's where the episode ends, and the first arc of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One ends. And y'all, thank you for bearing with me. I know that was a lot of information there at the end. But again, episode 14 of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One. And if you want to see our full discussion, it'll be linked down in the description below.
Yeah, don't forget to jump into our Discord either. By the way, we mentioned the Discord for the watch party, but we talk about Worlds Beyond in there as well. So feel free to join us there, or in the comments below.
Yeah.
So,
boom, boom,
boom, chicka boom.
It's a lot, and
That was a lot.
man,
Good job.
What a good ep. What a good arc. I don't like since it is the end of the arc. I figured I'd just give them some flowers. Really, yeah, really, really. That was the one where like that the one where he like got smart because of like the experimental treatment, but then it like wore off.
I think he died.
Oh,
yeah.
But is that the one? And there was a mouse in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Algernon's the flower. I mean the mouse.
The mouse. That's right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just making sure I was on the same page.
Yeah. Don't worry about it, guys. We're just we're
classic. Fantastic. I know you have too, but this loving this story. Love the first arc, and I think I told you this already briefly, but in the fireside chat for this episode, Taylor Moore talked about how he loved the first arc, but really this second arc, which they've already completed filming or recording, he said it's incredible and like is really like setting the stage. So that just got me like so excited.
Bro, I'm like feverishly taking notes from Brennan Lee Mulligan, man. We are just seeing his brilliance on display. And that praise for Arc 2 has got me riled up. I mean, man, it's going to be tough to wait. We have to wait a month, and then the every other week pacing. It's going to be tough, but an amazing first arc though. It was good from the get-go. I really enjoyed it from the get-go.
Yeah. But
especially like the last 4 or 5 episodes is when really I was like, bro, this is getting really, really good.
Yeah. Things, we've talked about this before, but even being level 1, now level 2, technically, at least for Ursulon, the stakes have felt there the whole time,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Well, let's talk about this specific episode or about the arc in general. It's kind of funny in hindsight, like this was ultimately it was the story of breaking the curse, but it was also a story of Naram in Orima. And
Yeah.
we got that first breadcrumb of the fountain, which I think in hindsight, I think it was Naram's face was the one that had been like destroyed or
Yeah,
damaged.
yeah, it was.
And it was a nice, I think in retrospect, it was a nice implication or insight that something had happened to Naram.
Yeah, yeah, like a little foreshadowing.
Yeah, really nice detail.
Yeah.
Brennan has mentioned how he's jealous that Matt Mercer has been able to like world build at length.
Mm-hmm.
And details like that has just shown, I think, Brennan really enjoying this whole creative process.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know where we want to like drill down on like the specific episode or the arc in general. But
yeah, I mean, I think we should, obviously talk about the episode, but since it is the last one, feel free to just, toss in the full arc thoughts as well.
It's cool continuing to understand the world of the realm of spirits, and which also the realm, I'm going to call it the realm of humans, only because I think humans was mentioned. However, is it confirmed that there are no other D&D races in Umora? Because we haven't had mentions of elves, dwarves, gnomes.
That's a good point that I hadn't even thought about. Huh.
And Brennan's never described any of those races.
Well, we
either.
did. Well, no, never mind. I was gonna bring up. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but I was gonna bring up the workshop girl, but she was a spirit. So
right.
Yeah, that's interesting. That hadn't even like pinged for me. Yeah, I don't think there has been any mention of one, but I don't think that necessarily means there couldn't be still. Like maybe this part of the world is human. But yeah, that's really interesting.
Well, what rises to the top for you in terms of content you want to talk
about? One moment in particular I just loved, and it speaks to the immense skill of all of them, players and DM. Which I don't know if you happened to notice this in the comments when we were having our Calamity watch party last night, but we were talking about like improv and stuff. So I just quickly referenced this moment. So you may remember, but
didn't I start this conversation in the watch party?
Maybe about improv, but you haven't heard the fireside chat, have you?
No.
Okay. So yeah, so there's just the moment they talked about, which was an incredible moment that I actually didn't even mention in the recap, at least not explicitly. But at the end there, where Suvi is reading her father's notes and putting these things together, when Ursulon comes in, he says, "Who are you talking to?" And Suvi says, "My dad." And that was just such a good, like, that was such an amazing moment. And it was born out of all improv. And they talked about this in the fireside chat, how like one, like they were all just complimenting each other's skills. And, we're talking about how like that seemed so, I don't know if easy is the right word, but it seems so fluid and so natural, but like all of the years of like improv work that go behind like making something like that so fluid and natural. But just like it was Brennan who like introduced Ursulon, had made it to the room, and then Ursulon taking it upon himself to like recognizing what just happened and saying, "Who are you talking to?" And Suvi to immediately, be like, "My dad." I know I'm just waxing poetic right now, but loved that moment, and just like they were talking about in the fireside chat, just really a testament to like how good they all are. So
yeah, and I feel like, not to beat a dead horse, but I feel like this is always like something worth mentioning. I think it's a good reminder for all of us who play D&D, all those levels of experience that you just talked about. Because I've talked with other people who they're just like, "Oh man, I'm never witty enough," or I can never think of like the line to say.
Yeah.
And it's like you mentioned, I mean, we're talking years of experience here, and we're getting to see people in their element, which is also why I love how the Patreon is so well supported too. I mean, ideally they can, I think even Aabria actually, not in Worlds Beyond, but elsewhere, I think there was like some conversation about this, and she was like, yeah, my job is to play D&D. Like this is this is so weird. But it's so cool though. It's so cool like seeing people's incredible expertise on display.
Yeah.
So yeah, amazing moment. Brennan had some freaking phenomenal moments. It's coming back up in the Calamity rewatch, but I think about episode, I think it was 12 maybe, when Ursulon in the finale is using Wavebreaker to free Naram, and Brennan basically has this amazing moment where he says, you know, you are a being of infiniteness or something to that effect. And something to the effect of like, maybe you don't get to be infinite without being first singular, like sort of like appreciating this like action.
Yeah.
So like the way Brennan even like, you know, comes up with these like really moving lines. And I think a lot of this kind of, the momentum of all of this really picked up on the back half, which is why I think I mean, like I said, it was already good from the get-go, but especially this back half, you could really feel some really cool energy. And the episodes got longer too, which I liked.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. I wonder if that is just like I wonder if that will continue, or if we'll go back toward kind of like the hour-long eps at the start of the next arc. Yeah, I just I wonder how much of that was kind of leaning into like the climax of it versus just maybe they started to tend to like that length more.
And you know, I suspect we talked about this in either this episode or one before it, how there have been some content cut. I think the most notable
yes,
one,
I wanted to talk about this.
The most notable one for a listener, I think, would be when Archmage Galani is giving her speech to Naram, like, you won't overtake Port Talon. Her voice trails off, and we don't hear the end of it. It's basically cut out, whether it's intentionally or not, and in the sense of like whether Brennan intended it or not. But then you and I were talking about it, and you mentioned some content being cut, and all this to say, if an episode early on was like an hour and 15 minutes, which we had some around there, I wonder if like the uncut content was like more like a 2-hour session, which
I'm sure, you know,
me.
because even non-narrative stuff that's cut, just like the time between rolls, or like, oh, what should I do on my turn, like all that stuff is clearly cut, which can, you know, easily make up half of a runtime of a session. So
yeah, that's 3/4 of my players' combat usually.
Feels like most people, for sure.
What can I do again? Like, you're level 1, you can Eldritch Blast.
Eldritch Blast. But yeah, we've talked about this. I wonder that as well. Like the Galani example you mentioned, like maybe that was all Brennan said, and it's like, hey, let's take a quick 15 to get some water, you know, and so just Taylor in the production like has it trail off, but maybe there wasn't anything else Brennan said. But
maybe it was an awkward segue too to cut away from it either.
Yeah.
So, but continue what you were saying.
But an example that, and I'm glad you brought this up because I had forgotten. In our last episode, when we recorded it, I hadn't had a chance to listen to that fireside chat yet. But then I did, and I was like, dang, I wish I had listened to this because I wanted to bring this up, and it's on this subject. So in episode 13, when Ursulon frees Naram with Wavebreaker, we have the moment where you become level 2, you get Divine Smite, and you're successful. Well, in the fireside chat, they brought up how when Lou first did that, he's not level 2. He fails. Like, he doesn't do enough damage to free Naram. And Lou talks about how like he was like devastated. He was sad. And then Brennan said, but you leveled up to 2, so roll your Divine Smite damage and add that. And in the version we get as the audience, all that was cut out. It was just your level 2 Divine Smite, you were successful, which I understand. Like, I understand why these cuts and these changes are made, but that was one of the first times where I was like, oh, I'm kind of sad that like I didn't get that experience too of like he failed and then, but you know, so which you know, I'm not saying either one is right or wrong, but that really made me wonder, okay, what else has been cut out that we've kind of missed out on?
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, like, Brennan's so good at creating like very intentional moments for a very specific character.
Yeah.
And Brennan also, I don't want to say, it's not that some things he does is convoluted, but some, I think the perfect example is the scratch notes from Suvi's dad, where it like come out the null cleft and it
Yeah.
got very technical. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty on brand Brennan, of like Brennan's so smart and kind of cerebral in the moment
Mm-hmm.
that I wonder if like his mental steps of you fail but you get level 2 and you get the divine smite, like I wonder if like in post production it just felt clunky. And I wouldn't say this is true, but like one thing I've noticed is they've really worked in post production to remove clunkiness. Like we don't,
Yeah.
like you said, we don't get the okay. Now what is insight wisdom? Okay,
Yeah.
what is that? They just say boom, here's what I rolled. Like they remove a lot of that. So I wonder if that was the reason. But you're right. It does make you wonder. It's like could we ever get like an unedited version on the Patreon?
That would be
Like,
interesting.
you know, a year from now, hey, the first 20 episodes are up if you want to just hear them as they happened. Which maybe not. Maybe they're they're like, I made that one joke. Don't air that episode. I don't know.
I wouldn't see them releasing it wholly unedited, but like maybe like here's a little cool sneak peek of like some moments that were cut, but like there's funny, you know, type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like for the majority of the time, that type of stuff being cut is not going to affect the narrative or the story. But so like I'm cool with them. And this is like a kind of entirely different beast than something like Critical Role, which is completely unedited. And at this point, I really enjoy what Worlds Beyond Number is, and I wouldn't want it to be Critical Role. But at the same time, I wouldn't want Critical Role to all of a sudden cut that out and become like what this is. So I think both are really cool in their own way. And back to my original point, the majority of the time, I don't think really anything narratively is lost in the way that they do it. But occasionally, like I do feel kind of a little bit was lost in not being able to experience that same journey that Lou and that Ursulon had in that moment.
Yeah, and I can see it from the whole perspective of you and I had a whole dialogue about what would Brennan do, what is his GMing habits for his players, and we talked about like I guess Lou's roll was like a 24 or something to hit, and I was more kind of like, I mean, surely it's a level 1, like it's surely he's good, and you were like, well, maybe not though.
Yeah,
like I think from like what was lost, I think it's not validation, it's like you're like developing an insight about kind of the style of what the campaign's going to be like we've never seen Crown of Candy. Right. But we know Brennan said from the get-go that, hey, you need to have a backup character, and then presumably people's characters die. So it I don't know, it's part of the experience, like formulating like so I totally relate with you in the sense of like something, even though it's small, something being lost there.
Yeah. And I don't want to just start repeating myself like I always do, but yeah, I think we're on the same page. And that being said, not that anyone took it this way, but that being said, freaking love everything Taylor is doing. Like he's just as much as a master in his realm than that these guys are in theirs. That freaking song, I did not see that coming, man. And that's so cool that with this style of show, like we were just talking about, compared to something like Critical Role, they can do that. Like they went out and had this in-universe song like created, and during the fireside chat, he talked about like he worked with a choir and he worked with these other people, and that was just such a cool moment that completely caught me off guard when that song started playing.
Yeah, it's artifacts that you do for your D&D table. You know, I mean, it was for us, obviously, but it definitely gave me like a D&D table vibe of like, here's this thing that we can now like kind of fully experience. But yeah, I loved that too, and I also loved semi-related the children choir when Naram, I guess 2 episodes ago, was like erupting out of the sea. Like that was also and actually not even that, a few episodes before that, a couple of, I think it was episode before that, when Steele is the episode The Prisoner's Dilemma, where Steele's interrogating them, and there was this really epic music. all this to say, I'm agreeing with you that Taylor Moore, the first couple episodes, I was like, yeah, I can see it. This is cool. But then it feels like it kind of hit its stride on the back half.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to just see how Taylor's evolves as this goes on, because I'm sure we've mentioned this before, but he apparently taught himself how to do this stuff, like to do this job. So like he isn't like a a super experienced I don't even know what to call it, sound productioner, I don't know, but
producer.
He's just
audio producer,
already done an incredible job, and I just can't wait to see what else comes out of
That is interesting. I didn't know that. That's an interesting insight, because when on one of the episodes that he was delayed on, you and I talked about this a little bit, where I said, like, this is the first I'm hearing that from you. We talked about some detail from him about, I can't remember what it was, but I said something like, having done like so much podcasting production, I was like, oh, that's really interesting that he's doing it that way. And I remember like the voice memo I sent.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's a process thing that he hasn't iterated yet. But then there's this other detail where he was talking, maybe in the Discord, I don't know where it was, but he was sharing like the program he was using and like some of the issues that he was running into that was causing the delay, because we had a couple of weeks of delay. And there was a comment, someone who was like, oh, well, why would you use that program for like this thing? This is so ambiguous, because I'm pulling it from like the way back in my memory. Someone's like, oh, why are you using that program? Because usually you would use this for that task. But everybody's like an armchair expert, so who knows if it was accurate. But all this to say, I think coming into his own, developing his process, getting more reps. This is not to say that he's inexperienced or not qualified. I think he's doing great. But yeah, I think as he explores and gets more creative, it's kind of fun to think about what Arc 2 might sound like and be like.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I think I said this, so sorry for repeating myself, but they did reveal that Arc 2 is already done. Well, it's already recorded, I should say. Right. It's probably not done post-production wise.
Did they say it's the same length or similar lengths?
They didn't say. They just said that the comment was just that we just finished chapter 2 and we're gearing up to start chapter 3, like in terms of recording it.
Yeah, I think this is good. I think this is something I wish Critical Role did a better job of, in that having this 14 episode arc and knowing that I think it was around episode 13 they had recorded up through 22, something like that. So presuming Arc 2 is a similar-esque length, I think these things can be a little bit easier to get people invited in part of the experience. Whereas with something like Critical Role, if someone was like, hey, where do I start watching, or like, how do I catch up for this current campaign, I'm not totally sure where I direct them, but also we're in the middle of it as well.
Right.
But like 70 episodes deep, I don't necessarily have that same sense of like the Goku saga, the Buu saga, kind of thing. So anyway, but
I feel you. And I don't, I mean, they were clearly recorded much more, like the fact that they've already done chapter 2, I don't think is a new thing. Like they obviously recorded a lot in advance, and that's just how that's how their process has worked the whole time. But I'm hoping that with this long break between Arc 1 and Arc 2, and the fact that they already have all of Arc 2 done, hopefully that lets Taylor have a better workflow to where, like you mentioned, a lot of episodes were late or run, as it were, which who cares? Like, I'm glad that he's not like on a forced deadline and like freaking out. But I wonder if all those things combined, if he'll have like a much better, easier time like working on everything with, not having to like wait for them to send them the raw recordings each week to then start working on it or whatever.
Yeah. Do you think we ever get to a situation where we get weekly episodes?
Probably not. I mean, anything's possible, I guess, but the fact they already have, they're already doing it so far in advance, like they are, clearly like the 2-week thing has nothing to do with like that in my mind. So for whatever reason, they just wanted to do it this way. But I mean, who knows? Maybe they decide to switch things up for like the next campaign, whatever that might be. But I would have a hard time seeing them do it for The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One.
Well, they are already doing the sorry, like a bunch of doors are getting open and closed around my house. They're already doing
the one shots and stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to finish the sentence, but my toddler is knocking on the door saying, "I'm here." You keep talking for a second. Let me see what's going on here.
Okay. So yeah, I think what Blake was alluding to is the fact that they're already doing stuff during the off weeks, you know, whether that be the fireside chat or things like I wanted to call it Animal Farm. That's not what it's called though. Whatever the Erika Ishii DM little saga was, which I think that was 2 episodes. And then this was Patreon only, but now that is available to everyone. So for those of you that don't have Patreon and you wanted to check that out, that is available. And then for my Patreon only folks, we are getting the Cram Daniel one shot, which I think it's more than 1 episode, but that, I think the first episode of that just recently came out.
Yes. Sorry, she had to let me know that she did in fact pee in the potty.
Oh, what a freaking champ. Let's go.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Anyway, so I don't want to segue us too hard, but I would really like to talk about the curse.
Yeah.
More specific on this episode. This was obviously like a main storyline for the episode. We got a really cool detail. Which, by the way, I just wonder, like, Brennan, there's things that you envision, like not railroad, like there's things that you envision happening in a certain framework or a certain element. We know that he semi-pushed the group to, hey, we'll decurse this at the Citadel. And like, I just wonder like what he had kind of envisioned there. The party was like, we're good. And they do it themselves. I don't know if you hear my dog barking, by the way. Sorry about that. But they do it themselves. We have this really fantastic, cool detail of it, how it affected Ame, which I think was kind of wild. And then we got a nice little throwback to Yoren, episode 1, maybe, I guess the pre-episodes actually, or the children's story, excuse me.
Yeah.
But an interesting little detail about Yoren, who is from, what's the name of his country? Gathmire.
Yeah, Gauthmai? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of curious. Like, we obviously have a really big reveal that's coming in the first episode of the next arc, this conversation. What all was going through your mind as you were seeing this stuff unfold?
I don't know. I mean, because we've had numerous times throughout this season, we've talked about Steel. And not to retread that same ground a million times, but to put it very, very quickly for those of you that maybe have not watched us before or haven't heard us talk about this, if she's being completely forthright, not that she's secretly like the big bad, but could she have had something to do with Suvi's parents dying, or is she holding things back? Which at least at this point we know she has been holding things back. There's a conversation she wanted to have with Suvi for so long. So I don't know. Thus far, everything Steel has done has made her out to be like she really is like a good person, to put it simply. She really was. She really does care for Suvi. Yada yada yada. And I don't know if like I'm just being like contrarian, but all that makes me think, she does have some sort of secret, So
Bro,
I don't know. I feel like, and I'm thinking too archetypal like narrative storytelling, which this isn't that, so I shouldn't like expect that. But I feel like Yoren is maybe being framed, maybe like, the evil demon guy that only her father trusted. Oh, he really was the bad guy. I'm still like, maybe he wasn't. Maybe Steel is still the one that, betrayed them.
Bro.
What?
I totally agree. This freaking Lady Steel, everything she does just makes me more suspicious, Which, yeah, I think Brennan has. I'm just gonna go all in on this for a second, okay?
Yeah.
With the disclaimer, guys, that we're never wrong, okay? Brennan has brilliantly allowed certain details to simmer a bit. This fact that Steele has never talked about the last night she saw her parents. It's interesting that, oh, now we should probably talk about this as the party's taking another step closer towards revealing whatever the truth is.
Yeah.
But then also the other thing that felt like a reach to me, not because Brennan played it poorly, but because, like you, I am just so obsessed with like these these narrative turns.
Yeah.
When Steele mentioned the visitor, the stranger, King of Night, Pilgrim in the Night, King of Under the Stars, whatever it is. She's talking about the curse. She says, it's not a coincidence. The curse, this person who came to the cottage, sort of like subtly linking those two things together.
Yeah.
Which felt, let me get you off my scent-esque, for lack of better words. Because the curse was presumably there before the stranger. For me, grandmother in passing is what invited the stranger.
Yeah.
When we've talked about this, whether it was as a Grim Reaper-esque character or just like her dying. But yeah, we're on the same page, man. I'm like totally like Steele. I see you.
Yeah, and not to say that like she's like the orchestrator of
right.
all the bad, but like that at least. And I mean, she has admitted to as much as not being fully transparent, but like in a bad way to some extent, is my thoughts. And now, one part that doesn't really mesh up with that, at least from what we know right now, is the fact that it does smell like urine. So like,
right.
Now that could easily have been like planted, for lack of a better word, or like maybe there was some way to make it, like maybe that was intentional to point people in that way. Or maybe it really was him. Go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe it's just of his origin from Gathmire or whatever. True.
Not necessarily him, but like reminded her of that because.
Yeah, maybe Steele is like, it's like, man, I should really get rid of this stuff from Yoren that he left. I'm like, oh, what's this black vial? Hey, I need to use this on grandmother. I don't know. I mean, it could just be, it came from Yoren, but not to Yoren's knowledge, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be something like that. I mean, there's a lot at play here, and I think it is more complicated than just
right
this microcosm of Suvi and Steele. Like, I mean, clearly it's way more complicated than that. So these things we're talking about with Steele and Yoren, obviously it has more branching than just the situation we're discussing right now. But because clearly there's just like we got and I don't remember the exact words, but we got whatever the implication was in that first episode, that like the fact that Soft was working with Yoren was kind of strange, but no, he trusted him. So like presumably Yoren was like a double agent. I mean, I don't know if that's fair to assume or not, or like a spy. Who knows if he was playing both sides or not, but there's this greater question of like what was happening at the Citadel that night. Why were Suvi's parents like trying to get away? Like, did they uncover something? Not that Suvi's parents were Gauthmai agents. I don't believe that, but like maybe they found out something about the Citadel that they weren't, like they couldn't be on board with anymore. So like, I don't know. There's just so much here to unpack that I don't know what to make of it, but you and I are on the same page that something's up with Steele still that I can't just like shake, because this one, everything, she's almost been too cool at every pass, But I will say that in the children's adventure, there is a little bit more context revealed here. And it's not really spoilery, so I feel comfortable saying it, but there's this moment where like this information is brought like to Rin, essentially, that is dealing with so people like Yoren, I get, can transform into like his bestial form or whatever that was like briefly described, you know.
Right.
So there are like the identities of like these beast forms, let's call it. And I don't know if that's only Gauth Mayans or if like Citadel wizards, if some of them can also transform. It makes me think of, you know, Harry Potter, like Sirius Black could turn into a wolf and like you had to register like with what you turned into type of thing. There was that information of like, oh, this thing is Yorin. Like this thing is this person. And so like that information was there and it was like, this has to be kept secret.
Wasn't that like something that she wanted delivered to Grandmother Wren or something? Like,
oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. So maybe it wasn't the children's adventure then.
Yeah, I think that was part of the stuff
that's what Steele had Suvi bring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got my wires crossed. So yeah, then that's not even a children's adventure spoiler. So that is very interesting too. Like in conjunction with all these other pieces.
The conjunction.
Junction.
I was thinking The Witcher, but thank you for that.
Oh, conjunction of the spheres. There we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and I know I'm just like going full Pepe Silva here, but also there is a possibility that like Ame is not necessarily, or never mind. That's not true because Yorin maybe knew where Suvi's parents were sending Suvi. I guess he did. Maybe not explicitly, but he was at least there.
Yeah, true.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I was going to say the fact that if Yorin did put this curse on Ame, like maybe he didn't even know that Ame would be at all connected to Suvi, but he probably would have. So that was me taking that back, but that's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got us lost in the sauce. So if you want to go anywhere now,
there's no saving that. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. You know, I don't know. I would love to hear what other people are thinking. If anyone else is like, you story junkies, you know, who like feed on delicious plot twists. I feel like this is prime. And again, it's not because Brennan's done anything, he's shown his hand or played anything wrongly.
No,
it's just that I am just, you know, addicted to this kind of stuff. And
no, quite the opposite. You know, honestly, like not that what we're saying is right, but if it did turn out to be right, then I think that would be expert like storytelling by Brennan to like set up those things. So yeah, I'm really interested to see what Steele says, you know, but no sense in speculating on that wildly. So we'll just have to we'll revisit this conversation, I'm sure, whenever we find out what the secrets are that she's been keeping.
Okay. What else?
Not too much to say here, but I loved that whole moment with Naram and Orima. Like Naram taking the bullet, as it were. I was concerned. I was like, is Naram gonna die? But then I thought that was so beautiful as well when like Orima like immediately like started sucking out the poison, and it was like, and I don't remember Brennan's words, but it was essentially like, you know, they've known each other so long, they've been married, like she knows how to not hurt him. It was like the type of phrase or something. Yeah, I just thought that whole moment was so cool.
Yeah. He played the gentle wave spirit very well. I love that dialogue too. And I guess it's good that she could remove the poison, because I guess the alternative was, well, Naram's dead. You know, and Orima just going crazy.
Yep, Rampage just got worse.
Yeah. Some other things, just looking at dates. So they've said early, I don't know if they've specified beyond this, but they did say in early October we would get the witch class revealed, the details of that. We'll also get the wave breaker stat block on the 11th. We'll get the level 2 leveling up details on the 19th. And like we already mentioned, the premiere of Arc 2 on the 24th, which is 4 weeks from this video.
Yeah, I like that they're at least kind of giving us some things to chew on while we wait. I'm excited to see those stat blocks.
Me too. Yeah.
And
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Well, I had read a comment too of like someone who was like a Patreon subscriber who was like really annoyed that A Country Affair got aired live. Like kind of like what do I pay for? And I was kind of just I don't know, man. I was kind of just like, come on, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of weird to me. Like you had it like a month, if not months in advance. Plus you get the fireside chats. Like,
and I'm kind of on the when I pay for someone's Patreon, this is just me. This is not. I have no problem if anyone approaches this differently. I have a few people on that I'm a Patreon of, and for me, it's like, hey, do whatever you want with the money. Like I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
no. Hopefully that person is in the minority. I can't imagine most people would feel that way.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, I would grant that there would be certain things theoretically that like if they were introduced as like you only get this if you're a Patreon forever, like, you know, if it was like, I can't think of an example, but like there is something that would exist that then if like the next day they turned around and gave it to everybody, I would be like, well, what the heck? But like definitely don't think that's the case here. So yeah, I just think that person needs to chill out a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I briefly mentioned this during the recap, but I'm looking at my notes here. And I just thought, talking about how good Brennan is, the moment right after the Naram Orima chaos where they're back in the room talking about the curse and they all start talking about penises and stuff. He's able to take that, like, you just left this like ultra serious moment and you're kind of entering a new one with the removal of this curse, but things kind of got derailed with now we're all phallic. He like beautifully got them back on track with, and again, I'm just looking at my notes, so I don't have the actual lines in front of me, but they were laughing both at the table, but also in character. And so Brennan turned that moment into this powerful moment where he connected for Ursulon that honor is not always about sorrow. Like honor can be about joy, and the laughter of your friends in this moment remind you of the joy of that summer. And I was like, golly, like what? Like you could have just been like, okay, guys, like let's get serious. Okay, now you were trying to remove the curse. Instead of that, like he connects it in universe and makes it like poignant. So I just thought that was awesome.
That's why he's the GOAT.
Thought that was awesome.
Those penis jokes continued into the outro too, which I hope those little stingers stay. The first one I remember is Taylor doing maybe episode 12, maybe 13 with like the water, like the sound of like water kind of coming from the microphone. I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about.
Kind of.
So I'm digging the little outro stingers.
Well, I remember one, which I don't know if it's fair to call it a stinger, but it was the episode where they first met Finley, and Lou was like, Finley! He plays one more Finley at like the very end of the episode.
I didn't catch that. Okay.
I thought it was really funny. But yeah, I hope that continues as well.
Do you think Finley made it out?
What was the last we saw of Finley? I'm trying to remember now. Oh, they warned him and he was running away from what's his name? I don't know, man. Gallows seems like he kind of knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Finley does not seem like the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to think he did, though. I'm more curious about Ghost, though. I hope we
might see Ghost at the Citadel.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that she might be there. But yeah, even if we don't like see her on screen again, I hope we get some sort of update on her.
Yeah. And her candle golem.
Yeah.
So right. Well, anything else from you?
I'm just taking a look at my notes right now. This isn't really like a discussion topic, but I did think it was really cool how Naram referred to Ame as like the new witch of the world's heart. So again, something we talked about before, but I just am really interested to learn more about like what that freaking means and like what this fane of power inside Grandmother Wren's house is. And then the only other thing, I just thought that of the many beautiful things said, that the whole quote that this episode is named after, there is an ocean vaster than this one, upon whose waves the sun is always shining. It calls you home, and I know one day a great feast will be laid for you in that place. Just thought that was nice.
Hopefully on good terms that he returns home. And not like you died and you go back home.
Yeah, I wonder what happens when spirits die.
I don't know. All right, squad. Let us know what y'all thought of the episode and also your favorite parts from Arc 1. Another gentle reminder, we got the Discord where we talk about Worlds Beyond. You're welcome to join. Anybody's welcome to join, whether you are a casual fan or a more hardcore fan, and whether you've been following every week or you've just been jumping in lately. Like I said, everybody's welcome to that Discord. And like Will mentioned earlier, I guess this will be us, the last video from us for maybe till the premiere. Maybe we'll do like one more till then. I don't know. But
yeah, we'll have to see. But yeah, like if you need something to kill time in the next month, come join the Discord. Come join us for this Calamity rewatch. That'd be almost perfect timing for when that ends and when this picks back up. So especially if you've never seen it before, would highly recommend. But yeah, that's all I got.
Alrighty. Catch you guys later.
Bye, y'all.